Welcome back to The Retirement Trainer. Today, we are excited to welcome back a very special guest for the third time, Dr. Art Laffer. He's a world-renowned economist, trusted advisor to presidents and prime ministers, and the visionary behind the Laffer Curve and modern supply-side economics. Over the decades, Dr. Laffer's ideas have shaped economic policies across the globe, and today he is joining us once again to talk about some hot-button issues: tariffs, trade wars, tax cuts, and what they all mean for you, your money, and your retirement. So let's get into it.
Well, I'm curious. So you're going to Israel. What business are you going to be doing in Israel?
I'm going to be giving lectures and group meetings on the
Mhm.
economy to Israelis. Benjamin Netanyahu has cited me many times as his favorite economist, even though I'm not Jewish. He says, there are some economists who aren't Jewish, and Art Laffer is not Jewish. He's one of that little tiny, but he's my favorite economist anyway. So it's really fun. So I'll probably be seeing him and a lot of the other, just a lecture series there.
Fantastic.
And
Fantastic. All right.
so
Well, since you're giving a lecture there, obviously you're going to be talking about economics, and I'm sure tariffs are going to be at
only economics.
purely economics. So, and you just got done meeting with President Trump. So
Yep.
we just hit the 100-day mark last week. So today is May
Yes.
5th. So I'm curious, what grade would you give the current administration based on what they outlined, what they got elected on, and their performance to date so far?
Well, I'm not going to give a grade. I'm not. I've always argued against giving grades. Servants should not give their
Hmm.
masters grades. I never thought it was appropriate for me to give grades to my students because they're my customers, not my. You don't grade your customers. I mean, come on, that's not. But let me just say that I will tell you what I feel about his first term.
Hmm.
His first term in office. I think he was the single. Now I'm talking only economics.
Sure, absolutely.
I
That's
don't
all we're
have
talking
social.
about. It's just pure economics.
In
Yep.
my view, in my world, if you're transgender and you like tax cuts, you got a seat at my table. I could give a damn about social issues, really. Now, obviously, I live them personally, but unless you're forcing me to do something personal, I don't care about any of those other issues. It's just economics. And I would rank Trump's first term as the single best first term of any American president ever. And I'll go through that with you if you would like me to. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was spectacular. I mean, we lowered the corporate rate from 34 to 35 to 21%.
Hmm.
We lowered the personal income tax rate from 39.6 to 37. We had 100% expensing of capital purchases. We dropped the inheritance tax dramatic. I mean, it was a huge tax one. When warp speed hit, when COVID hit, he was able to get a viable, really good vaccine within 9 months. The expectation was at that time it would take 7, 8 years going through the FDA and all that. And he put in $1 trillion and shortchanged all the stuff there. And we got a really great vaccine by the end of 2020, which is pretty amazing.
Hmm.
He also did right to try, which if you've got a terminal disease, you shouldn't have to go under FDA rules. You should be able to try any damn drug you want. If you want to try experimental, whatever it is, you're going to die anyway. It's your should. And even though the Democratic Party voted against it, we got enough Democrats in there, especially Jared Polis from Colorado, to vote for it. So we passed that. He was able to do that. He did his medical transparency executive order, which is probably the single most powerful economic problem we face, and including everything.
Hmm.
That's amazing. You have to post prices and post results, and people have to know what the markets are to do that. We got energy independence by deregulation of that. He appointed 3 members of the Supreme Court, and I know they judge on lots and lots of things, but just on economics, the Chevron decision I think was huge plus, and
I
all of
agree.
that is to Donald Trump doing that. And I could go on and on. He did 5 major trade bills in his first term. The first one was USMCA, which was very free trade. Then we had the deal done with Japan, which also lowered tariffs, lowered non-tariff barriers, which was great. South Korea was the same thing, a and freeing trade, not adding tariffs. We then did the one with Brazil, and we did it with Colombia. So all of those trade measures were with freer trade, not more restrictive trade. So when I look at Trump, and there are a couple of other things I could mention as well, but that gives you a flavor of its first term and why I thought he was the single best president in U.S. history. And that puts him up against my hero of all heroes, which is Ronald Reagan. But he was better than Ronald Reagan. Now, Reagan was great. So you got me there. Now, looking at him in the first 100 days, uh, Donald Trump's Donald Trump. He is he's highly educated, not a PhD, but he's got a prep school background, military,
Right.
private education. He went to Wharton, which they claim is an Ivy League college. Good being a Yaley myself, we don't quite think of it that way, but he's got a good education there. He comes from a very established family of many generations of privilege, so that his education was always looking at the bigger picture, not I'm a farmer or not I'm a coal miner, not with special interest driving his life. He's never had a special interest driving his life. Donald Trump made billions and billions of dollars personally. He's clearly a highly successful business person. There may be better ones, but he's pretty damn good. I wish I could have been that good a business person. As I told you, he was a great first-term president there. He's an extraordinarily energetic, thoughtful man, and he is very knowledgeable. I've spent a fair amount of time with him, and I can just tell you, he knows the arguments backwards and forwards. And when I'm with him, we, like it was then, we had probably discussed 40 things in an hour and a half, an hour and 15 minutes, whatever it was, just the two of us. We had Stephen Miller to my right. We had James Blair to my left, but they were there to answer questions when he said, can we do that politically? But, that type of thing. He and I were there sharing candy and eating gobbles out of things. And, there was no moment of respite. We didn't get a recess. We didn't get any time off. It was through the whole hour plus. When I left the room, another person came in and did another one the whole time. He's incredible high energy, incredibly knowledgeable, all of that. And I put it all together from my standpoint. And this is just me, I'm not pushing anyone else. I'm talking just economics. I think he is I can't think of anyone who would be a better president of the United States than Donald Trump. And I'm really quite shocked at other people trying to second guess him, when in fact he was elected president. The chances of him being elected president in 2020 after the election were zero. His perseverance as folks, he wants to be president. Who wants to be president who's got in the right mind? But he does. He did, and he wants to serve the people. He does want that. Now, you may not like his humor, you may not think he's disrespectful or whatever it is, and that's your right.
Right.
But, as far as qualifications go, there's no one more qualified than he is ever. Not only is there no one more qualified, there's no one who wants the job like he does, and who is qualified. And my view is that I can't think of any person on earth I would prefer to see as president of the United States than Donald Trump. That's me talking. That doesn't mean he's going to guarantee to be successful, because he's not. He's not. You can have COVID-19. All sorts of contingencies can happen. But given that role, that situation, I feel more comfortable with him being president than I can with anyone else I can imagine. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't make mistakes, but I don't think anyone out there has any clue as to what it's like being president of the United States and having to weigh all these different considerations, making all these decisions in all these different areas. And he is as competent and as qualified as anyone I've ever seen. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it.
All right.
I'm not partisan in that sense, but I love the way he thinks. I love the knowledge he has, and I know the knowledge that I don't have that he does have. And when I'm with him, I understand that perfectly. I understand I'm giving him one slice of and he's got all sorts of other considerations there. He's got other people to think about in there. And my job when I'm with him is to give him information to let him make better decisions. That's all. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense.
And I hear these people say, I've done this, I've done that. You would not. They're just blowhard asses.
Well, there's
They
a big
don't give
difference
a such.
between that and being president of the United States. I mean, it's a whole nother level. The most powerful man in the world. Uh,
Not only that, it's the most, he's the most knowledgeable man too. I mean, I hear people, he shouldn't have done that. He should have done this. They have no idea. They're just spouting partisan crap. I mean, we had no wars in his first term. His first thing to do is to end that Ukraine war. What God, I can't imagine the Lord presenting us with a better objective than peace in Ukraine or peace in the Middle East. You know those things would not have happened had he been president. The Houthis, the thing now. I mean,
mhm.
this guy wants peace. And they're negotiating and putting his life in the line. He's dumping stuff inside that deal. You know he is to get the peace, to stop shooting. I mean,
Well, and to emphasize that fact, I mean, he had an opportunity to actually go to war with Iran, and they really backed off. And so, I think that people are really not seeing the bigger picture. He really is looking for peace. Excuse me.
well,
And so,
he is. And you and I see the world. I don't know whether we see the world the same way or not. I don't know you well, but that's what I want in a president. And if you like him, yeah, it this is not about opinions. I could give a goddamn what your opinion is. This is about facts, not how you feel. And what does he do? If you don't like the way he looks, his orange hair, if you don't like the way he's, put it on silent, cut the picture out. But just look at what he does. I watch these channels there and I'll talk about this guy in El Salvador. Yeah, that may be a problem. One guy, three kids, and I mean, maybe we should bring the guy back and put him through the process. But that's this big versus this big, and it's trying to find something nasty to say
a
about it.
distraction is really all it is.
Well, it's not. It's a subtraction. It's not a distraction. It's a subtraction.
Good
If
point.
they're trying to make him look bad by one example of one goddamn guy with MS-13, and I don't want to argue the case, but all of these things, does Doge make a mistake on cutting some funds that they shouldn't have cut it? Of course they do, for God. But is Doge doing the right job? You're damn right it is. You're damn
Anytime
right.
that they can protect the money, it's our money, and people forget that.
No,
Um,
but they don't forget it. They just don't like Trump.
Well, not
Oh,
only
Obama
that,
did it.
they're taking their private slush fund away, and so that therein lies the argument. I mean, that's
But don't worry, don't
basic.
you think for a moment that we didn't have our private slush fund in there too as Republicans? We did.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
if we don't have
Across the
private,
board, this isn't Republican or Democrat. I
it's
mean,
a slush
yeah,
fund. And anyone facing the slush fund issue would agree with Elon Musk. Everyone, Democrat, liberal, conservative, tall, short, black, white, everyone would agree with him. But they don't like Trump. And they go after that to make a case against him on a penny versus throwing away $100 million. And it's sad, but I wish the other I wish all of them would just report the facts. But I guess there's no audience to be had by just having facts. You need to show the baby smashed by the tractor, and the mistake. I
right.
don't. But that's where I'm coming out. Now, does that make
Well, and it's
sense to you?
frustrating when they say, "Well, it's only a couple $1 billion." Only a couple billion. I mean,
I got you. I got you.
yeah, that's just upsetting that they're even thinking about it in those terms.
Well,
It all adds up
they,
at the end of
they,
the day.
they think of it in those terms to diminish him. There is, I believe, I believe there really is an anti-Trump syndrome, some Trump derangement syndrome. I do believe there's that, but it's also true of a Biden derangement syndrome.
It is.
It's also true of a Reagan derangement. People dislike the president in power unless he says words to you. The question is, we're all in the same boat together. And I'm going to use a Kennedy quote here because I'm a Kennedy Democrat and a Reagan Republican and a Trump supporter and a Clinton supporter. I voted for Clinton twice. I loved him. I thought he was a great president. The is that no American is ever made better off uh, by pulling a fellow American down. by making another American worse off. And we're all made better off if any one of us is made better off. A rising tide really does raise all. We,
Raise all
rich,
ships. Yep.
poor, black and white, male and female, old and young, we're all in this tub together. And if our boat goes up, every one of us does well. And if our boat goes down, we all drown equally. And it's just so, so, so important to understand that. And Kennedy also said it so beautifully in his military things. Yeah, the best form of defense spending is always wasted. Whenever you find yourself in a situation where you are required to use your military hardware and prowess, that is a clear sign that you did not spend enough. The reason you have military is so that you don't use it, not so that you do use it. And, whenever you put money into places like Ukraine and stuff, you've missed the point of military. The point of military is so you don't have to shoot someone.
Avoidance. I think Reagan even said, I don't know if it was his quote or he copied it, walk softly and carry a big stick. I mean,
Well, that
that's
was copying. That was Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy
And
Roosevelt. That's right. That's right.
and it was John F. Kennedy that also said that putting locks on your doors is not wasted money. Hello?
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
invite their invasion. Protect yourself from it and lock your doors, for God's sake, when you go to a party downtown. Iowa.
And don't
There
leave
you
the
go.
doors open and invite people in when you don't want them to come in.
That's right. And that's true. And you can sit there and say, yes, this person has babies and all that. And that's true. And how many are you willing? And I'm perfectly willing to let some come in, but not all. If we had 2 billion people wanting to come in the border this year, I don't think we would be the country we are with 2 billion additional people coming in. I'm just saying that.
Well,
So
I mean, technically, legally, you can't be a country with open borders. I mean, you actually have to have borders. Otherwise, you're not a
uh,
country. You're not sovereign.
you and I are seeing the world very similarly. Now,
All
what
right.
can I do for you on trade and other stuff? And
So let me
uh,
ask you about tariffs. What's your opinion on tariffs and how do you think that they've impacted the economy and
let
the
me direct the conversation to where I think you
Sure,
should be.
absolutely.
So responding to your question, and you can cut me out and burn me in little effigy or whatever you want to do. Trade. I'm a trade economist. I did my PhD in trade, pure trade theory and balance of payments, international finance. That's my specialty. And when you look at trade, it is the exact same thing as Adam Smith called specialization. If you had only one country in the world, all the benefits would be from specialization. These guys make this, these guys make that, they combine it and make this, and they're different locations, they're different skills. So all that it's the specialization that creates the prosperity. All right, that's the hope. Now, once you take that world, one country world, and you break it up into 200 countries, specialization has to occur by something happening in one country and something happening in another country, and they combine together and make a bigger pie. Okay, they
Hmm.
specialize. Both of them are better off. This is called the Ricardian gains from trade. That we make some products better than foreigners. Foreigners make some products better than we do. We and they would be foolish in the extreme if we didn't sell them those products we make more efficiently than they do in exchange for those products they make more efficiently than we do. And I could take you through it very technically, very mathematically, but I think you got the picture. Uh,
Absolutely.
Nicaragua should produce bananas in the winter and send them to Minnesota. Minnesota should produce something else in the winter and send it to Nicaragua or whatever, Costa Rica. That's specialization. It's a factor endowments, climate, whatever it is, skills of the population. But that's the Ricardian gains from trade. And this is huge. This is all the stuff Adam Smith and David Ricardo and Hume talk about a comparative advantage, gains from trade. David Ricardo. Okay, you follow me on that?
Absolutely.
There's one other gain from trade, which is the Alexander gains from trade. And that has to do with allocating savings to investors. All right. Let's imagine there's a machine up in Hokkaido, Japan, that's not doing well. It's losing money hand over fist. They don't know how to use it. Blah, 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 blah. It's just a crappy machine that's not being used right. And let's imagine there's a factory in Denver, Colorado. They could well use that machine to be incredibly efficient and productive, all that. Okay.
Hmm.
We take a truck, we get that machine in Hokkaido. We take it down to Tokyo Harbor. We load it on a ship. We send it over to San Francisco. We offload it onto a truck in there in San Francisco. We drive it up to Colorado. We put it in that factory there. All of a sudden, that machine now is superly productive, wonderfully productive. Uh, the world is a better place because we've taken that one machine, which wasn't productive, and made it into a very productive machine by moving its location. You with me?
Yep.
By loading that machine onto a ship in Tokyo Harbor, that's called a Japanese export and a Japanese trade surplus. By offloading that machine in San Francisco, that's a U.S. import and a U.S. trade deficit. Our trade deficit means we brought the machine in. Their trade surplus is they sent the machine out. Now, there's one additional difference. The U.S. now has one machine more than it otherwise would have had, and Japan has one machine less than it otherwise would have had. That's called a capital surplus and a capital deficit. Our trade deficit is our capital surplus, and Japan's trade surplus is their capital deficit. One and the same thing. You follow me there?
Yes.
That's what happens. That's trade. Now, that's the second thing. Trade, where we invest capital into one place, they use it better than we do or whatever. Now, from 1640 until 1870, 230 years, we ran trade deficits each and every year, capital surpluses, with the exception of 7 years. Those 7 years, you'll find humorous years, 1776 and 1777. The Brits, for some reason, weren't willing to ship goods to us. In 1811, 1812, for the same reason, those belligerent bastards, they weren't willing to ship goods to us either. That's 4 years. And then we had the canal bonds in 1842, 1843, and 1844, where Rothschild said America will never get another penny from Europe. 3 years, and they were investing in us again. Okay. Those are the 7 years. But every year we imported capital from the rest of the world, Europe, almost all of it from Britain and Holland, a little bit from other countries, but we brought that capital into the US. We combined it with our natural resources and our population, and we created the preeminent economic force on planet Earth because of trade deficits, capital surpluses. That's the truth. That's hugely, hugely important. So you have the two gains from trade: comparative advantage, and the gain, Alexander gains from trade of savings going to investment. Bingo. You with me?
Absolutely.
Now, to give you a flavor of how important that is, I'll give you two negative episodes.
Okay.
One was in the late 1920s, early 1930s. It was called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff.
Yes.
Hoover was Secretary of Commerce under Coolidge. And during the roaring 20s, agriculture did not do well. The U.S. economy did really well, but agriculture didn't. And Hoover wanted to protect the farmer. That was what the Secretary of Commerce's role was. When Coolidge's term ended, Hoover was the Republican nominee. He was elected in 1928. He took office in March of 1929. All right. And in March of 1929 was when the bill had been going through the process. In those days, bills took a long time to get through the House and the Senate. They had to compromise. All these other industries piled on and wanted their protection as well. And it became this behemoth big bill. It was the largest tax increase on traded products in U.S. history. All right. And it finally passed the House and the Senate in the fourth quarter of 1929. And Hoover signed it into law in June of 1930. But everyone knew he was going to sign it. In the fourth quarter of 1929, when it has passed the House and the Senate, the market had just hit a peak in the third quarter of 29. And the market dropped 35% in the fourth quarter of 1929 as the bill passed both the House and the Senate. When it was signed into law in June of 1930, the market continued its collapse. It fell to 7% of its prior value. It declined by 93%, which just in today's terms, if let's say the Dow is at 40,000 Will you give me that?
Yep.
If we were to have a market decline by that, imagine if the Dow went from 40,000 to 2,800. That's what actually happened in that period of time. The unemployment rate went from 2%, 1%, somewhere in there to 25%. We had the biggest collapse of all time. Hoover panicked. What he did was he raised tax rates to shore up the deficits in the federal government. By shoring them up, he raised the highest tax rate from 25% to 63%. That good enough for you?
Mm-hmm.
He taxes on everything else. Roosevelt then in 1937 raised it to 79%. The highest tax rate ultimately went in 1944 to 94%. There, I could go through all this stuff. That anything that crawled was taxed, anything that flew was taxed,
Right.
anyone holes taxed, swam it flat. If you just sat there and wiggled, you were taxed. That's what actually happened. My colleague Bob Mundell, when he got his Nobel laureate, stated it really clearly. He said the Smoot-Hawley tariff caused the Great Depression, and the Great Depression caused World War II. That's pretty goddamn bad. Now, I was in the White House of 1970 to 72. I was George Shultz's right-hand person when Nixon did his 10% import tax surcharge.
Mm-hmm.
We also excluded foreign-made capital from the job development credit, which was an investment tax credit only applicable to American-made machines capital there, but it was very discriminatory, very protectionist. And of course, we had the 70s there, which were a really crap period of time. Gold, but it was just
Right.
horrible. Nixon was thrown out of office. So that's the negative side. Now, the positive side, just to make sure you understand it's symmetric. Kennedy did the Kennedy round tariff negotiation, which he was called the Kennedy round, to drop tariffs quite dramatically in the 60s. It led to the go-go 60s, plus other policies, but the go-go 60s were a clear consequence of freer trade that Kennedy had put in. Reagan put in something called NAFTA that was finally passed by Bill Clinton. You know, that whole period was just spectacular. It led to the growing thing. So any way you cut it, trade is really, 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 really important. And I can't impress upon you and your listeners more by saying it's really important. The two gains from trade are the Ricardian gains from trade, and we have the Alexander gains from trade. I hope you see both of those clearly. But there's a difference today than back in the days of yore. Now, the difference today is really only in applications. The principles, Ricardian and Alexander gains from trade, are still the exact same as they always were. But legislation on tariffs has changed totally. In the olden days, you had to take years to get a bill, then you had to get a compromise past the House and the Senate. Then you had, conciliation committee, and then you had it signed into law by the president. And once it's in there, it's never to be removed. It takes centuries to remove a bad bill. So it was very cumbersome, process that was absolutely irreversible once it's done. You with me?
Absolutely. Yep.
Today it's not. Today it's not. It's done by executive order. I can raise a tariff on you tomorrow morning and take it away tomorrow afternoon. I can do it on your left ear or your right ear. I mean, I can do anything. What was cumbersome and very irreversible now is completely reversible, completely flexible. It's a totally different set of tools today, as exercised by President Trump and Biden. It's totally different than ever before. That's a huge difference. Now, I'll come back to what that difference means.
Okay.
The second difference, which is really important as well, is not only is our trade policies completely flexible by the minute, by the hour, by the day, by the product, blah, 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 and any way you want to do it. Not only that, but also we have something called reciprocity. At the end of World War II, the United States was pretty amazing as a country. I mean, we were very generous. We didn't go and take over countries. We didn't do any of that stuff. In fact, countries, we really tried to build them back up. We put in the Marshall Plan. We gave them lots and lots of resources. My dad was on War Production Board. Our family company had facilities in Britain, in Japan, in Germany, and all these kind of Brazil. You know, we gave them the technology, all of this, and we also allowed them to protect domestic industries, to let them work under protectionism, to grow, to become competitive again. That happened. And throughout the years, we've done all that to the point we've gotten to today where there's something called reciprocity. where we are by far the freest trade nation in the world, by far. Now, there may be some little things like the Isle of Man or Jersey, Guernsey, and Sark or Monaco or whatever that's a freer trade. But of the anything that's a serious country, we are by far the freest trade nation. And those tariffs and those quotas and those non-tariff barriers they have against our products, which were put in there by our generosity, which were put in there, not only hurt us, but they hurt them too. And these people are absolutely ignorant dumbs. They're dummies of the first order, and they truly are. Their governments are absolutely ignorant. I mean, what government would have a 250% tariff on Wisconsin butter going to Canada? What type of, not only, but Japan says, well, we have all these little farmers, and if we let in American agriculture, they'll lose their jobs, blah, 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 and the culture of Japan. That's stupid. I don't want to argue that, but reciprocity has got to a point where their discrimination against our products is so outlandish versus ours against theirs that it's a very different world today. Second point. The third point, which is also very important, is leverage. And let me put it this way. Imagine two countries in the world, the United States and Puerto Rico. Those are the only two countries in the world.
Okay.
And the United States is 99% of the world, and Puerto Rico is only 1%. Okay? And let's imagine we have free trade. The Ricardian gains from trade are there. The Alexander gains from trade are there. Puerto Rico's exports are our imports. Our exports are their imports. Their trade surplus is our trade deficit. Our trade surplus is their trade deficit. It's perfectly harmoniously free trade between Puerto Rico and the United States. We're the only two countries. While it's true that there are no winners in a trade war, that's true. But everyone doesn't lose equally in a trade war. If there were a trade war between the U.S. and Puerto Rico where we stopped trading with Puerto Rico, it would affect U.S. It would be negative for the U.S. But 99% of the U.S. companies' sales are to fellow Americans. Only 1% is to Puerto Ricans. In Puerto Rico, 99% of their customers are Americans, and only 1% are trade there. The gains from trade to the U.S. on a per capita basis are very, very small. And the gains from trade to Puerto Rico on a basis are very, very large. So while we would lose the gains from trade, that's totally true.
Right.
They would be much more damaged than we would. So when you look at the world, we have flexibility, we have the reciprocity, and we have the leverage.
Leverage.
Now, the president called me, and I think it was 2019, and you can look this up on Vice. I did a segment on Vice on this conversation. I don't know anyone else that's had this conversation, so you have to believe me when I tell you it's true. And you can go back and look at that segment of Vice and my description of the conversation. He said, look at Arthur, their tariff barriers hurt them and us. They do. But you know, their mindset is stupid. They're mercantilists. All they care about is exporting goods to our country. And how do I get them to come to the table to lower tariffs, lower trade barriers, lower quotas? How do I get them to do that? They don't give a damn. All they want to do is sell to us and not buy from us. That's all they. He said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to threaten them with 50%, 100%, 200% tariffs to bring them to the table to negotiate free trade. That's what he said. Every comment he made in that conversation, and every time I'm with him, he understands the issues really, really well. All right.
He does. He was even talking about the China issues 15 years ago before anyone else was even talking about it.
He's a very smart and very learned
absolutely.
man. He really is focused. I mean, his focus is later. It's shocking how focused he is. Now, he does that. And what he said to me, he said, look, I'm going to use this leverage to negotiate freer trade. I can't let my pushback be my fallback. Because if I tell everyone what I just told you, I lose all leverage. I lose all the ability to negotiate. He's an expert negotiator, by the way. I lose it all. And so therefore, I can't tell everyone what my purpose is. But as you can see, the 5 bills he did do in the first term were freer trade. I can also tell you that when he went to Ottawa with the G7 meeting, He had to leave early to go to meet with Kim Jong-un. Everyone knows this story, so I'm not
Right.
telling school. He had to go to meet with Kim Jong-un, and he apologized to the 6 members. I have to leave a little bit early. Forgive me, guys, but you don't want a nuclear war. Believe me, you don't. And I want a negotiation, even though he threatens his button. My button's bigger, but there, and I'm going to go. But I got a deal. Before I leave, the U.S. is prepared right now to make a deal with the 6 of you to get rid of all tariffs, all quotas, and all non-tariff barriers if you guys will. And they looked at the ceiling, they looked at their shoes, they looked all over the place. Bye, Donald. See you later. Yeah. This is my view of Donald Trump on trade. Um, I could very well be wrong, and I often am wrong. And I really try not to be wrong. And the reason I'm recounting this story to you and your
Mhm.
and your and your podcasters, the reason is because this is information I have that I don't know that all of them has that information. And I think it's really important if you understand the conversations, all of what Donald Trump has done, who he is, and what he stands for, is I think there's a very good chance that he is negotiating the freest trade world that we'll ever see. That's my view of the world. I can't guarantee that. I'm much better at forecasting the past than I am the future. I am. But I do believe that this man is focused on freer trade.
Hmm.
I believe that he is trying to get it, and I
Mhm.
believe he's there. We will find out very soon whether I'm right or wrong. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. You can't go for much longer than that without having some resolution to these issues. Otherwise, it blows up and all the supply chains and all that break down. And so that's where I am on trade, and that's where I am on Donald Trump. And honestly, I'm just hoping to God I'm right. I am not a Donald Trump person in the sense of my personality. I'm a wuss. Whenever anyone has tough negotiations, sits there and looks at me, I start crying.
Mhm.
I wet my pants. I curl up in a fetal position. I
Oh, I
climb
find that
into.
hard to believe.
No, but I'm not a good negotiator. I really am not, and I'm not a belligerent person. I
Mhm.
don't go to war. I don't find whenever you fight, you always lose. My view. You may not lose as much as the guy you beat up, but you both lose. There's ever. There's no benefit to war. I don't think ever. When you silence someone, don't think you've convinced them. You haven't. When I see Donald Trump doing his belligerent negotiation stuff, I cringe. I cry. I get
No, I
very
agree.
scared.
I do too. Yep.
I do. I get very scared, and I don't know how it's going to come out. And I doubt myself all the time. And I always have. I always, when people disagree with me, I immediately assume I'm wrong, and I go back and check it. And that's where I am today. And I hope that puts the perspective of my perspective on trade negotiations, tariffs, and what's going on in the world. I hope that makes it clear to you why I am the way I am. I still
Mhm.
trust Donald Trump, but don't for a moment think that if he goes the trade protectionist route, we will have a catastrophe. That I'm deadly certain of. I know my trade statistics. I know my trade really well. There's no economist better on trade than I am. I've got the number one grades. All these guys on the other party got their PhDs with me. And believe me, I didn't get the lowest grades in the class. I got the highest. All right. So I know my facts. It's not a matter of facts. Trade wars really are bad and will crush this economy and crush world peace. It really will. I don't think.
Well, you know what? I also think it affects the world economy too. And every time I look at this as things go through, I kind of look at the tariffs, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I normally am, almost as a form of tactics. I mean, we're starting to see more manufacturing come back. I think I heard Donald Trump say, close to $8 trillion has already been promised to be reinvested into the U.S. We're already starting to see the steel plant down in Louisiana and other things already starting coming to fruition. Um,
Well, that's not a blessing to me. I could give a damn whether we have manufacturing or not, as long as we
okay,
are
why is that?
pushing. Well, because I think comparative advantage there. If there's another country that does manufacturing better than we do, why wouldn't we use them and get better quality products at lower prices because they're better at it than we are? I don't want us to become the preeminent banana producer in Minnesota, frankly. And if we are
Yep.
good at now, when you look at manufacturing and you say we've lost a lot, oh, you're right, we have. But why have we lost a lot? You think it's China? I think it's Whitmer. I think it's Ohio. Look at their taxes. In 1950, Detroit had a population of 1.8 million, and it's now less than 600,000 because of taxes, because of Romney putting in the income tax, because there was a profits tax in Michigan. They are forced union. They're all, who wants to put in property taxes in Detroit go up to as high as 20% per annum on the value of your property? Who wants to build a factory there, for Christ's sake? No one. Our
Cost
problem
prohibitive.
is us. We're like Pogo. We look in the mirror and say, I've seen the enemy and it is us. And, trying to blame our lack of manufacturing on China is stupid. It's not China, it's us. Now, we in Tennessee, who have no income tax, we have the lowest tax state in the nation. We have no right, we're right to work state. We're no inheritance tax. Blah, 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 blah. We're great, low property taxes. We have more manufacturing coming into Tennessee than we can swallow. We can, oh, God, not another manufacturing facility, please, no. Our problem is we are crappy at governing ourselves. We have very bad laws with regard now. His Tax Cuts and Jobs Act addressed some of that really well, but we need to get down to state and local levels and make it so that America is willing to be attractive to manufacturing. But we aren't. So I think blaming China is an excuse. It's like blaming your color of your skin or blaming your religion and that they're picking on me. It's not my fault. Yes, it is your fault. It's Michigan's fault. They've elected crappy governments, crappy people in their legislature. They've done crappy policies, and no wonder they've lost everything. People in Illinois, have you ever seen anything worse than that Pritzker guy? And except for all the ones before. I remember
Yeah.
when Ogilvy put in the income tax when I lived in Illinois, when I was at the University of Chicago. They are self-immolating, self-destructive, horrible masochists, these
Well, and,
states.
and they're getting ready to ask for a bailout, just like California is.
Of course they are,
They're
because they
just
find
horribly run.
yeah, we horribly run, and then we're going to bail them out, which means we justify their being horribly run. So I think we're looking at the
Yep.
wrong problem. China's not our enemy. China's our friend, to be honest with you. China sells us high quality products at low cost. And I'll tell you, if we boycott China and we sanction China and they will become our enemy forever. We put on sanctions on Cuba in 1959. What was that, 66 years ago?
Yeah.
See how it's worked? The Cubans now, thank God we did that, because now they're pro-growth, free market, economic capitalist nations, and we're best of friends. And they say, thank you, America, for all. No, they hate us. They hate us.
Well, all right. So let's talk about the taxes. So the reconciliation bill with Trump wanting to do away with taxes on Social Security, no taxes on tips and overtime, lowering the business income tax. I guess two questions. I'm in favor of that, right? I think I do a
Well, I'm
much
not on Social Security. Why would you ever give people who don't work more money? Why would you do that?
in a double taxation. I mean, they already paid taxes on it once, and now when they're
Well,
getting
they
it,
pay
they're paying taxes
partial
again.
taxes. They got some of their Social Security was not tax 50/50, but okay, that's fine. So what? You can argue equity with me, or you want production.
Oh,
Which do
production.
you tell
Yeah,
me which?
I'd rather have production.
Which would you prefer? This is what I said to him in the meeting.
Okay.
Which would you prefer? We're going to want to stimulate the economy. Which would you prefer? Giving money to people who don't work, or cutting taxes on people who do work? Both of them lead to the same deficit. Which would you rather have?
Rewarding good behavior. So,
Thank you.
yes,
Now,
absolutely.
what I suggested to him, and unfortunately I got to him late in 2020. I got to him 5 days late, so Mnuchin had already struck the deal with Schumer and Pelosi. But my comment to him was, no, don't use bailout funds. Just have a waiver of the payroll tax for a year. It's the same amount of money. And yet the one you have an increase in production, the other one you have an increase in indolence.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're
Thank you.
exactly right. The
Thank you.
welfare
Well,
state.
that's
Yep.
why I'm the best economist around, to be honest with you. My suggestion in 2008 was we have a U.S. federal tax holiday for a year and a half. The same amount of money as that Obama, Wama, and those yahoos put in there in spending, just to have a tax holiday for a year and a half. Same amount of money. Can you imagine what this country would look like if we had no taxes whatsoever for a year and a half? We'd
Oh,
be selling
you go through the
country.
roof.
But yeah, what's wrong with that? Duh. Hello. If you tax people who work and you pay people who don't work, don't be surprised if you find a lot of people not working. Hello, please listen.
Well, and
And
we're already seeing it, right?
why
I
would you
mean, the
ever
welfare
want to
state is
cut
getting
tax?
larger and larger.
But Social Security payments are welfare, are transfer payments.
You know what? You
They
are
are.
honestly, I never really. I'm still thinking about myself and our clients. People who are productive. But you forget the bigger picture, the scope of a lot of folks receiving Social Security.
Always cut taxes, never increase payments to non. You got to have some amount of generosity in your heart to the unemployed and all that.
Right.
But really, you do not want to do a welfare program that creates the very problems that you need the welfare for. If you have high enough unemployment benefits, and if you have high enough welfare restrictions, the poverty trapped stuff, you're going to create poverty. And then you're going to have everyone saying, we need to help them. What you want to make sure is self-immolation is not what your end goal is.
Teach
Yes, you
them
want
a
to
fish
have.
and not give them a fish. Absolutely.
Can I go through the transfer theorem with you? And
Please.
it's just math, and it's not liberal, it's not conservative, it's not left wing, right wing, Republican, Democrats, not Harvard versus MTSU. It's just math. A transfer is when you take from those who have a little bit more and you give to those who have a little bit less. You follow me on that?
Yep.
The transfer. Now, whenever you take from those who have a little bit more, you reduce their incentives to produce, and they'll produce a little bit less. You
Yep.
with me?
Absolutely.
Whenever you give to those who have a little bit less, you provide them with an alternative source of income other than working, and they too will produce a little bit less. It's math now. Whenever you transfer resources from old to young, from young to old, from short to fat to old, whatever it is, from rich to poor, whenever you transfer resources, you always reduce total production. Always. It's a math theorem. You follow me?
Yes.
So whenever you get government spending above what is produced, any type of transfer, any type of equity, didn't they want to, aren't they just, all of that crap, whenever you do that, you reduce total production. Now, the lemma from this theorem is sort of fun. The
Okay.
lemma is the more you transfer, the greater will be the reduction in total production.
And that makes
Now,
perfect sense. We're seeing that now, living proof.
I'm not going to prove that theorem to you, but it's easily provable. I prove to you that whenever you transfer, you reduce total production. Now, the limit function of this theorem is beautiful. And I
Okay.
am going to prove this to you. The limit function is if you were able, and I wish Bernie Sanders were on your podcast or Elizabeth Warren or whatever. The limit of this theorem is very simple, that if you were able to transfer resources in such a way that everyone came out exactly the same, if you were able to do that, that's the limit function.
Mm-hmm.
There will be no production whatsoever. Let me try it for you. In order to get everyone to come out exactly the same, what you would have to do is you would have to tax all those who earn above the average income 100% of the excess. You'd have to subsidize all those below the average income up to the average income. Now, that's the only way you can guarantee everyone comes out exactly the same. All right. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
you actually did that, if you actually taxed everyone above the average income 100% of the excess, and if you actually subsidize everyone below the average income up to the average income 100%, I will stipulate that a counselor will all come out equal at zero. And it will be zero. The only way you can achieve income equality is if everyone is equally poor. If you have everyone earning nothing and one dumb son of a gun makes $1 income inequality increases. Get that guy down to, and you guarantee that you're there. Do you follow the transfer theorem?
Absolutely.
I need you and your listeners to understand this is math, and I don't give a damn if you're Larry Summers or Paul Krugman or Wapabuta Dupa, there ain't no lesson from it's math. They're all wrong on transfer stimulating the economy. They don't. If you give the money to people who don't work and you take it from those who do work, you're going to get less work. You follow me?
I not
That's
only do I follow, I agree wholeheartedly, and that's why I'm
I
against the
don't,
standard working
but it's
week.
not a matter
Yeah.
of agree in the sense of opinions. This is math.
Math. It's
This
true.
is this is
Absolutely.
facts, not
Yep.
opinions. And
It is not
opinions are
supposition.
just,
Yep.
I could give a damn what your goddamn opinion is. This is about facts, not how you feel. And these guys are all wrong and they're playing all the wrong cards. And I hope to God that we can win this one. If you got my book, Taxes Have Consequences,
Yes.
which is the complete history of the U.S. income tax, and I hope uh, all of your listeners buy the thing. It goes through the whole. We have every single tax return. We know what happens. I mean, literally, whenever we raise tax rates on the top 1% of income earners, the economy underperformed, tax revenues went down, not up, and the poor got hammered. Every time we've lowered tax rates on the top 1% of income earners, every time we've done that, the economy has outperformed. Tax revenues from the rich have gone up, and the poor have gotten jobs and output and have made better off. If you think the poor were really great during the Great Depression when we raised the highest tax rate in the 90s, if you think the poor did really well during World War II, you got another thunk coming. That's ignorant. The poor did really well in the roaring 20s. The poor did really well under Reagan. The poor did really well under Kennedy. And the poor did really well under Trump. And revenues went up in all these cases. It's just
It's
it's
the
just
Laffer curve. It's
well,
math.
it's just straight incentives. It's just simple. I used to tell my students this. I said, if I ran this class the way your government runs your country, what I would do is I'd flunk all the A students out and I'd give all the F students scholarships. Yeah, I see you smirking a little bit. Before you smirk and think of it as funny, my A students happen to be a little bit smarter than my F students. So once I changed the rules, my A students are able to get lower grades than my F students because they never randomly make a mistake of guessing a correct answer. My A students still get all the scholarships. My F students are still flunked out. I have not changed the distribution of grades one iota. But what have I done? I've destroyed the entire quality of the educational process. Every revolution on planet Earth has been fought to change the distribution of income. Wah, 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 wah. All right. Not one of them have succeeded, but what have they all succeeded in doing is destroying the economy. Please have your guys read the book. Taxes Have Consequences. I love it because we go through every single period there in great detail. It's fun reading. You can't read it like a novel, but it goes through all this of what happened during the Great Depression, what happened during World War II, what happened in the Roaring 20s. In the Roaring 20s, we cut the highest tax rate from 73% to 25%. That a good enough cut for you? We had 11 years of budget surplus. It was the greatest boom. Inflation not only came, price level came down during that period. It was the greatest boom time ever. What happened when Hoover raised the taxes? On it goes. Every single gimmick. The rich know how to get tax shelters. They can hire lawyers, accountants,
Yep.
deferred income specialists, favor grabbers, politicians. When you see a bunch of people hanging around with Obama, don't think it's those people there trying to tell him what it's like being poor. This is people from Goldman Sachs trying to figure out a new tax shelter they can sell when they leave government. That's the way it works. A low rate, broad based, flat tax is the right way to go. Spending restraint, sound money, minimal regulations, and free trade. And then get the hell out of the way and let the market solve it. Once you've got the rules right, then get back and let them work it out for themselves. And that's my story.
Boy, I'll tell you what, I can't think of a better way to end. That was fantastic, Dr. Laffer. Yeah,
Well, my pleasure. And get your guys to get that book. And any of your people there, if they get it through you and you want to send me, I'll sign it and put in a thing there for them and send it back to you, no additional cost. I mean, you got to pay for the books. I'll buy them and charge at my pretty low discount rate. But I'd be more than happy to do that with anyone
I am
who
going to
does.
take you up on that.
Please.
Absolutely.
And I'll do upwards of 1,000 of them if you buy. I mean, it's doing very well, by the way, the book.
It is. And it is a great book. It is. It's
And
fantastic.
if you look at Piketty and Sias, they don't know straight up from Sikkim. I look at Larry Summers, and I used to look at him when he was really fat and stupid. Now, obviously, Ozempic has done the fat, but they ain't no fixing stupid. And he's still saying just dumb stuff. And it's so sad because, it's wrong. And, and there are people who do believe him, who do think he's a very, serious, well-considered person, but he's giving the wrong model to people. And, he's leading people to make bad decisions. And
I agree.
Paul Krugman said there's a direct link between the Laffer Curve, the January 6th riots, and the killing of Black people in Buffalo.
Yeah.
He said exactly. What type of crap is that? I'm just a little old economist out here who believes in economics. It's all about incentives. That's what it is. And if you want to go to these
Math
people
versus propaganda, that's really what it is.
It's not propaganda. It's cool words, and you get to slice people down. And you get to make. China is not our enemy. We should trade as much as we can with China, with Russia, with Iran, and with North Korea. Once you trade with someone, you do business with them. Do you like your customers?
Absolutely.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Once you trade with them, you got an anniversary coming up next week. Let's have dinner. Well, by the way, excuse me, Mr. Chinaman, that we do business with. What are those people up in the north of China that we are? What are you doing with those people? Well, what about you Americans with those Black people down in Alabama? You talk it over. If China invests in the U.S., they're much less likely to want to bomb us. You don't want to bomb and kill your customers, do you? Free trade leads to friendships. It leads to understanding of problems. It leads to peaceful solutions, not war. And we can ill afford war anymore. Now, I'm an old guy. I'm 85, as I told you. And I'm going to check out from you guys one of these days. Fair, not too soon, for a while. But, it's your world to play with. But if you want war and if you want hostilities and you want to be angry and flush red and I'm going to get you goddamn little bastards, if you want to do that, it's your turn to blow the place up. But I want peace during my era. I've been in enough war. I was born before World War II. I lived in Arizona with my grandparents. That was a shitty time. Americans were killed all over the place, Japanese, Germans, it was horrible. Cities blowing up. And I lived it through the Vietnam War, through the Korean War. I've lived through all of these goddamn wars. Stop already. Free trade. Talk it over with these people. Iranians used to be nice people. They would be once again if we traded with them. Russia's, we remember all the stuff Reagan did with Gorbachev,
Absolutely.
We can bring that back again. China has become the miracle of the century, eliminating more people from poverty because of supply side economics. Let's trade with them. Let's talk with them. They're nice people. They like girls. They like boys. They like kids. They're nice people. They have good food. They have bad food. Peace is really important. John Lennon was right. All we're saying, give peace a chance. Give free trade a chance. Give low-rate, broad-based, flat tax a chance. Give spending a chance. Give private people a chance to solve their own problems. Have a sound money. Not only that, but have minimal regulations. We know how to behave with each other. We don't need a law or regulation and everything. And we don't need to have people tell us we can't trade with foreigners. Throw those bastards out and get in people who like peace and free trade and capitalist economics. That's my lecture, sir.
I love it. That's wisdom. Great perspective. Dr. Laffer, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Retirement Trainer with your host, Ed Siddell. For our latest retirement news and financial tips, please visit egsi.financial.com or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you for listening to our podcast. We look forward to having you back for our next episode, where we will continue to explore the world of retirement. Until then, please remember to click, like, and subscribe. See you next episode.